Well, because this was linked in the Memory Alpha article, I decided to look at these write-ups here. 8 Star Trek spec scripts that never saw the light of day by Sarah Caldwell on Vulture. I have no idea why they have it. I'm not familiar with this site, so whatever. Anyway, though, here we have a quick blurb about stuff, who did stuff, blah blah blah, whatever. Past, present. See, most of the episodes of The Next Generation, Picard leads the episode by saying that he's just arrived at some planet or whatever. This one, the idea here was that it was actually just uh, a regular day's work that went weirdly wrong. Hey, you know what? That works. To be quite honest, some of the episodes did actually kind of sort of start like this. So the idea here is certainly something that would be cool. But this particular idea, though, didn't really get like fully developed. So you would have to figure out your own ideas for what the problem is that the crew needs to deal with, blah, 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 whatever. Or as a TTRPG uh, writer, you can just write a slice of life episode. The TV shows always had some big, exciting conflict. You don't actually need to do that to have fun playing a TTRPG. You can do slice of life stuff if you really want to. And slice of life episodes, while they're rare, you do see that in some of the episodes. Granted, they always get tacked onto some other thing. Usually they're the B plot, where the A plot is fighting some alien menace. And they put slice of life in as a filler to pad the episode runtime. But hey, you know what? It's a nice change of pace. Mm, to be honest, though, that their idea here of having Picard fight Khan is just a very, very strange one because, um, how are you going to say that Khan is back? Which is probably the entire reason this didn't get made, really. Anyways, moving on. Next one by Jose Molina. Spec was called an ancient species, and so on and so forth. Now, the idea of having, I think I actually saw a discussion about this one on the Memory Alpha one, where, and this one ends up actually having Data destroy the emotion chip instead of using it, which is peculiar and not the way it actually went because, let's be quite honest, what always found fascinating here is that in the next generation, they treat all of the works of the guy who created Data as unreplicatable feats of skill. Like when Data creates LOL, he fails. Most aspects of his design are actually easily replicatable. Starfleet could make an army of automatons with actually better physical strength than Data if they wanted to, because of the fact that the basic technology that makes up Data's chassis is not interesting or unique. However, the issue here is getting the positronic matrix to work, which, as I discussed in a separate one, the one I was talking about, LOL, actually, um, positronic matrix is, while very powerful for computational purposes, are used for the purpose of Data because of the fact that they aren't just straightforward computational devices. They're massively parallel computational devices and thus able to do things that a regular computer system can't. Thing is, you don't really need that to make an Android work. Mud's androids didn't do that. The Andromedan androids didn't do that. Arguably, the V'ger probe counts as an android because the fact that it is in fact said to be entirely mechanical. There is nothing organic inside the replica of Ilea created by the V'ger probe. None of those used positronic matrices, so you don't need a positronic matrix to have a functional android. But I digress. This was more family drama between Data and Lore, and they're trying to make the emotion chip seem even more ridiculously uh, complicated than it should be. Like one, um, why doesn't Data just make a duplicate of it? Again, I said that already, but whatever. It's probably the reason why this one got dumped is because of the fact that it went way too far on the idea of the emotion chip being unique and special and extra special. And here we have one from Naren Shankar, where this doesn't list the name of the episode because apparently the person sending in the mention of it didn't have the name. Now, the idea of Data dreaming is actually something that came up in some of the TNG episodes that did actually get made. And this particular one here doesn't really have a whole lot of um, stuff talking about it. But yeah, this one was just the idea of Data and dreaming, which let's face it, unless you're doing Soong type androids in a TTRPG, you have no reason to actually use this data because this is very, very specific to Soong type androids. Andrea from TOS. She was an android, uh, but the androids created by the old ones were fundamentally capable of feeling emotion by default. They did not need some fancy emotion chip to feel emotions. They just did because that's how they were built. And that is something that find to be rather odd with the whole like emotion chip thing anyways, is that the other kinds of androids and synthetic beings felt emotions without them. Uh anyway though, moving on. Jane Espenson. Oh right. This one actually did get covered when I was looking at the stuff in Memory Alpha. Data gets ripped apart and finds a piece of him that he doesn't know what is. Hmm. And this doesn't really actually go all that far. And when I talked about that one anyways. Lisa Klink, the empath. Now, there is actually one that was called that, if I remember right. And it was actually not made. But this is a different one where it involves Geordi doing the sort of stuff Troy normally does because the weird alien of the week is weird and Troy can't. But this one would have been interesting because the fact that Geordi, being an engineer, isn't accustomed to trying to understand other people's thoughts on that level that Troy does when she reads people telepathically. Oh well. And because I want to do all the stuff in this and close the Vulture page and forget about it, moving on to stuff from Deep Space Nine. Stephen DeKnight. Let's see here. Spec was called Giant. Once in Clark's bar, Wolf was there with Jadzia. He's up to the bar to get a drink and comes back to the table to discover there's a Ferengi hitting on his girlfriend. Hmm. Oh, a giant Ferengi fighting Worf. That is an amusing idea, but um, now the idea that Ferengi used to be a race of giants, there is actually something in canon that has merit here because of the fact that one thing we find out when the Ferengi Grand Nagus goes through the Celestial Temple, aka the Bajoran wormhole, is that the prophets decide to cause him to revert to the way Ferengi used to behave at some point in the past because they liked it better when Ferengi acted that way. And thus, Grand Nagus, I think it was Zek, becomes kind and generous and rewrites the rules of acquisition to be the polar opposite of what they normally are. Oh, that was a stupid episode. But that was, again, an idea that the Ferengi used to be a different race than they are today. They are what they became because of the fact that rampant greed took over their society and their entire culture got rebuilt around the rampant greed infecting their society. Well, this has the a different idea. Is that they used to be big and powerful fighters, and that the sneaky ones just survived better because the sneaky ones using tech didn't need the brute force and muscle that the big ones had, and being big and having brute force didn't really help that much when it came to using advanced tech, I guess. It's my read on this end, anyways. Anyways, though, thing is, Ferengi being respected because they're big doesn't really work on a galactic scale because let's face it, no one respects Nausicaans. And Nausicaans are huge. Nausicaans can just like pick you up and throw you across the room. No one respects them on a galactic scale because the fact that when it comes to actually being a powerful spacefaring race, they aren't. Being big and tall and scary looking doesn't get you that kind of respect on a galactic scale. Anyways, though, this would have these two Ferengi guys, one of whom was actually genetically modified, apparently. And apparently the Jim Hadar show up to kill the Ferengis. Why? I have no idea. But whatever. And they help the Ferengi escape because these two Ferengis are revolutionaries who want to make the Ferengi culture better. I'm not sure this counts as better, to be quite honest. But hey, whatever. It's an interesting idea. I can definitely see why they didn't use this because the fact that one, the final threat here is just random rug pull. It's like, why are the Jim Hadar here? Why would the Jim Hadar care about this? Is this just a random coincidence that the Jim Hadar showed up? Anyway, though, let's see. That was the only one that they listed here from DS9. Whatever. Let's try the Voyager one. Yeah, that's just a single panel. You can't really use that. Give us Steinberg. What does he say? B'Elanna is trying to use Cytherian technology to use a multiphasic tachyon generator to create an artificial wormhole to get them home. And she doesn't actually understand the technology, so attempting to target the wormhole doesn't work right. Oh, also, they end up in a dead galaxy that has had civilization as we know it literally die out. Hmm. Oh, and the galaxy that they accidentally jumped into has certain constants of physics shifted differently, and that the ship is literally dying because the fact that it jumped into a dead galaxy. I can see why this got tossed out. Now, the idea of going to a different place that has different physical laws that are hazardous to your health, that's a fun idea. Making it solely because the fact that it's this galaxy is too old is dumb. because being old doesn't change the laws of physics. Yeah, okay. They steal the energy output of a white dwarf star because they're the only thing left that has any power in this dead galaxy. Sure, that kind of works. Side note, wouldn't any spacefaring civilizations in this dead galaxy have used those white dwarf stars as a place to live? One would think, right? Again, major flaw in the plot idea here. Now, also, is that this has Harry Kim recreate the metaphasic shield experiment that was done on the USS Enterprise D in the Next Generation? Um, that's actually one of those things that's interesting because the fact that the reason that the Federation doesn't normally use shielding set up that way is because of the fact that they can't get it to stay stable for a long period of time, or at least they hadn't developed that ability yet. It's one of those things that in Star Trek, actual technological development gets often used as a plot device and forgotten because of the whole um, reset thing where you have to have the setting be mostly the same at the end of every episode. Like one of the things they actually did in the Next Generation that was seemingly a major change to the status quo and got forgotten relatively quickly afterwards was the whole warp uh, speed limitation because the fact that the Federation discovered that certain kinds of warp drive were damaging subspace and that they were at risk of creating major rifts in subspace in regions that were heavily trafficked via warp travel. Got dropped as a plot device and never actually used ever again. Yeah, metaphysics shields suffered the same effect, and having them get reused as a plot device is kind of cool. And then we have the uh, plot device here. What appears to be a Federation ship just boom, shows up. Well, seeing Janeway tries to talk to the people on the ship and find out that oh wait, they actually transported themselves forward in time, and that when they thought they'd transported themselves into a different uh, remote galaxy, they'd actually transported themselves into the Milky Way galaxy in the far future, and that was the problem with B'Elanna's coordinates is that she'd had an extreme temporal drift in the calculations because she didn't think about temporal deviation apparently or something. And of course, they do end up getting sent back to where they came from because symmetry has to be observed or something, something, whatever. And of course, this weird being is this a super entity, which is the combination of the life of everything in the galaxy. And that part of the reason why the physical laws are screwed up is that this super being is literally every form of life in the entire galaxy gathered into one being. I personally think this is like some like ridiculous nonsense. Star Trek has done ridiculous nonsense before, and having this set up as a possible future that may or may not actually happen would actually make it a fun episode idea. And also, we don't really know how far into the future this is. They don't actually say, just so like ridiculously billions of years into the future, where actually, it actually says here that that B'Elanna did actually succeed in targeting the Sol system. It's just that her um, efforts to do so went billions of years into the future. So they saw Earth's solar system billions of years in the future. Okay. Why would the sun be a white dwarf? Main sequence stars are supposed to turn into red dwarfs when they get to that age. Hmm, that's an interesting question to ponder. Anyway, though, this is one of those that you could probably do something with it, but it's just like one of those such a big concept things that I probably wouldn't actually try to use the whole thing. I'd probably just like take bits and pieces of it. Like the whole idea of like experimental travel technology that takes you to something that is not what you think you're going to. Parallel universes, alternate dimensions that have different physical laws. Fun sci-fi concepts that you could play with if you wanted to. Thing is, it's a drastic deviation from the way Star Trek normally does things. It's like the weird side of sci-fi, not the regular, mundane space diplomacy kind of sci-fi. However, Star Trek does both, so pick and choose as you will. And here we have the last one. Good. I was wondering how long this was. Mark Guggenheim did one about Chakotay. Space-time anomaly with someone from the future, maybe possibly. Oh, and the descendants of their selves. Sure, why not? And of course that it's an imposter. Sure, whatever. Now, this is actually something that kind of sort of came up with the episode with the Dauntless in the actual show. The reason, of course, that Janeway was highly suspicious of the Dauntless is the simple fact that they did not have a crew on the Dauntless, and thus they were kind of sort of, looking at this like, there's no way that the Federation would have remotely piloted a experimental Federation starship to the other side of the galaxy with no crew. So they didn't really trust the Dauntless, and they were right not to because it was an alien trick. They also did the whole thing with the silver blood aliens, imitating the crew of Voyager, and there's actually an entire episode of Voyager that's just the silver blood aliens doing stuff and and thinking that they're the crew of Voyager when they really aren't. Of course, one thing that's noteworthy with the silver blood aliens is that the silver blood aliens accidentally killed themselves because of the fact that they didn't understand that they were silver blood and that certain forms of radiation that are harmless to humans will cause the silver blood to liquefy and lose its form. And thus they accidentally wipe themselves out doing that. Oh boy. Yeah, shapeshifters are such an old thing in Star Trek that um adding a new kind of shapeshifter is no big deal. Now, one thing that's an interesting thing with this though is that what would be the shapeshifters' gimmick for convincing the crew of Voyager that they're actually from the future? Of course, you could put that in as the crux of how the shapeshifters get found out as frauds. They aren't able to provide a proper proof that they're from the future. At any rate, I think I'm done here. See you guys next.